Welcome all to another edition of the RGN C64 Roundup, your concise guide to the current day news and releases for your favourite 8-bit microcomputer. For this month's feature presentation, we're going to preview Miner 2019er, developed by Dan Avery. Dan Avery is a big fan of Miner 2049er, but it bothered him somewhat that the C64 version of the game was missing 3 levels that were present in the ColecoVision version. So Dan just decided to start coding his own version of Miner containing the missing levels, and then he just continued on creating additional levels until he got to the point where he thought that he could turn it into a fully fledged game that the C64 community would enjoy. It was at this point that Dan reached out to Bill Hogue, the designer of 2049er, to show him what he had done. Greatly impressed by what he saw, Bill encouraged Dan to continue on with his project and granted him a license to use all of the original graphic and game mechanics. As a result, we now have Miner 2019er, which is considered to be a prequel to the original Bounty Bob series. The backstory to the game is that it's year 2049 when Bob is snooping around the headquarters of the mining company that he works for and comes across a mysterious machine. Not able to help himself, he starts playing around with the control panel and steps inside the machine, and before he knows it, Bob finds himself back in 2019. Lucky him, I wish I could go back to 2019. However, Bob wants to get back to 2049, but to do this, he will need to complete 25 devious levels while collecting 20 fuel canisters in order to access the time machine again. Miner 2019er is designed to be faithful to the original Bounty Bob series, and this includes how the game looks. This will no doubt be a point of contention amongst viewers of this channel. There will be one side that will look at the game and dismiss it for its primitive graphics, while the other side will be filled with warm nostalgic feelings for the visuals that remind them of their first gaming experience where the quality of the gameplay stood out above everything else. Each of the 25 levels within Miner 2019er has the primary objective of guiding Bob around the platforms until every inch is filled with a solid colour. Collecting items will temporarily alter the enemy critters to a form that can be eliminated by having Bob run into them, and from time to time you'll come across uranium deposits that are briefly visible and be collected for big bonus points. Bob's jumping mechanic is fixed, just like the original title, and it is important to understand that safe jumps or falls within the game are determined by height. In this preview version of the game, Bounty Bob can safely fall 32 pixels from the highest point of his jump. This means that sometimes Bob is able to drop safely onto a platform, but if he were to jump onto the same platform, it would end in his death. Having an appreciation for this jump mechanic will ultimately allow you to obtain maximum enjoyment from the gameplay. Moving along, it is also important to understand that Miner 2019er is not a frantic arcade platformer. Each level presents a new challenge or puzzle for Bob to unravel. For example, on this level, we need to do a giant leap of faith into the haystack below in order to complete the level. Here, we need to figure out how to use the trampolines correctly in order to get to otherwise inaccessible platforms. While at this level, planning and timing are critical as we try to fill the platforms while making sure that none of the balloons reach the bottom of the screen. It's this variability of how a level is completed that differentiates Miner 2019er from many other platform games you play today, and for me, it's the element that makes the game so engaging. However, one part of the game that may frustrate many will be when Bob does lose one of his lives, as the whole level resets. For hardened arcade players, then they will appreciate the overall challenge on offer because of this. But for the rest of us, whose reflexes aren't what they used to be, we would all pine for progress to be retained after respawning. Earlier, I mentioned that Bob needs to collect 20 fuel canisters. The fuel canisters start to appear from level 6 and only reveal themselves as you walk by them. Each level from level 6 onwards has 1 fuel canister each for Bob to collect, and it is only where Bob collects all 20 canisters by the time you finish level 25 that he can gain access to the time machine that will take him back to 2049. Other features within Miner 2019er that need to be highlighted is that every 10,000 points you obtain results in a very much needed extra life. High scores are saved to disk, And the game has a speed medal system as an achievement reward for you to aim for, whereby you get a gold, silver or bronze medal based on the total amount of time you have taken to complete all 25 levels. Miner 2019 will be both PAL and NTSC compatible and will receive a commercial release via Cytronic software. The game is expected to be released in 2021, however Dan Avery continues to perform the final tweaking to the game in the meantime. RGN will review the final version of Miner 2019 upon its release. Time for us to look at some hardware for the C64. And this month, we're going to check out the GenAssister version 2 by Backbeat. This handy little joystick adapter is designed to let you safely use a Sega Mega Drive or Genesis controller with your C64 while at the same time taking advantage of the extra buttons on the controller. The device has a toggle switch when set in the middle, which enables you to use a Mega Drive or Genesis controller. But this switch can also be used as a joystick port selector with your standard C64 joystick. Setting the switch to the right sets it to port 2, while moving it to the left sets it to port 1. Just note that when the toggle is in either of these positions, the Mega Drive mode is disabled. The device also has a couple of indicators to let you know when port 2 is currently active and when autofire has been enabled. More on this later. Looking at the sides of the device, on one end we have the port for you to connect your controller to, while the other side has two connectors for you to plug into both joystick ports on the C64. With the GenAssister set to Mega Drive mode, button B of the controller will act as your standard fire button. Button A will act as the fire button for the alternate port, which will typically be port 1, which also happens to be mapped to the spacebar. This is particularly handy for games that require the spacebar for secondary actions, such as throwing grenades in Commando or doing rolls in 1942. Button C is mapped to the up joystick direction, so for games that use up for jumping, you can use this button instead. The Y button will provide a rapid fire for the duration that it's pressed, while the X button will toggle autofire on and off. The Z button is mapped to the second fire button, which was a feature of the joystick that was bundled in with the C64 GS and utilised by a number of games such as Turbocharge, Robocop 2 and Navy SEALs. And to round things off, the start button can also be used to toggle joystick port 1 or 2 as being active. This is how the GenAssister looks when plugged into the C64. The device has a couple of small legs to make sure that it sits well in place. The device works with an 8-bit DOE wireless gamepad, so let's see it in action. Trialling it out on Commando Arcade, we use the B button to fire. But when it comes to throwing grenades, then my days of leaning over to hit the spacebar are well over, as the A button has me covered. While we're at it, let's check out the rapid fire function with the Y button, and then hit the X button to toggle on autofire. Switching across to Ghost and Goblins Arcade, let's test out the C button for the jumping. As you can see, it works well, but the good thing is that you can still use your joystick up to jump at the same time if you need it. Okay, to test out the second fire button via Z button, let's load up Turbocharge and see if we can trigger the turbo boost. Looks good. The GenAssister version 2 is quite a versatile adapter that lets you get the most out of your C64 gaming experience, and is a device I can easily recommend. And by the way, this is not a sponsored ad. I paid for this device with the generous donations received from viewers. Thanks guys. Let's take a little break to enjoy some great pixel art. This month the scene has delivered an abundance of great looking artwork. Enjoy. Up next, let's check out some of the more notable news items that has caught my attention in the past few days. Pond Software has released teaser footage indicating that they are looking at extending a 4K game called Goblin that they released back in 2016. The original Goblin is a platformer where you guide a goblin character around in an effort to collect all of the potatoes on screen. It has a simple game design that is lots of fun to play. The extended version looks to flesh out gameplay mechanics out a little further and introduce additional levels. The game looks quite nice graphically, and some of the music tunes heard in the clip are very good. Let's hope that this project does go through to completion, as I think Pond Software are on a winner with this title if they do. Sarah Jane Avery has taken a pause from putting the finishing touches on Briley Witch to start work on Sword of Helja, a game that Sarah herself has described to be a Zelda-style game. Looking at her early footage of the game, we can see that graphically the game borrows the style used in Briley Witch Chronicles, which is not a bad thing at all. Can Sarah pull off the ultimate Zelda-type game for the C64? Given her recent resume, I can't see how she could fail, but don't expect the game to be released anytime soon, as there is plenty to be done here. Simon Jameson has been working on a C64 port of Chechenoid, a flick-screen style shooter originally released for Nintendo Switch. Looking at this footage released by Simon himself, the use of grayscale or chrome style colour palette is looking quite attractive, and no doubt many of you looking at the footage will instantly be reminded of Cybernoid. The Nintendo Switch version is quite a fun game to play, and with Simon being such a talented and passionate coder, it's reasonable to expect that Chechenoid will be the best it can on the C64. Upon its completion, Chechenoid will be published by Thalamus Digital. Monsters Go Boom is currently in the progress of developing a flick-screen platform game title called Boomerang. Based on this footage that Monsters has released, Boomerang is looking to be one very slick production. Not only does the game feature some very distinctive use of the C64 colour palette, making the game look clean but striking at the same time, but the general movement itself within the game appears silky smooth. Arlosoft is working on a port of Galaga for the C64 that is based on the Nintendo version as its starting point. I quite like the look of this port. The graphics are quite C64 looking, and it already includes many of the elements that make the game popular. The wave attacks look quite smooth, and the sounds are similar to the original as it can be, to ensure as close to an authentic remake as possible. A preview version of Galaga is available for everyone to download from Arlosoft's itch.io page. Alright, it's time now to check out some of the recent new releases. Let's see what we have. The Sputnik World team are back, and this time they've converted across the panoramic backlit colour Game & Watch version of Donkey Kong Jr. to provide us with Kong. This C64 adaptation has been enriched in the areas of graphics and the running sprite movement. The frame-by-frame nature of the movement found in the original has been partially retained and is noticeable in the balloon and umbrella section and while jumping. The premise of the game is simple. Navigate your way through the jungle, avoiding obstacles and falling into water in order to unlock each of the 4 locks, keeping Kong captive. The most challenging part of the game will be trying to time the umbrellas and balloons in the right position so that you can unlock one of Kong's chains. I found Kong to be quite fun to play as a simple arcade experience. There are some issues with the game when it comes to enemy bird placement, as at times it appears impossible to avoid them, and some of the hit detection feels a little bit inconsistent. Other than that, the game sounds good and looks great. Kong is a free digital game that is well worth a try. Crosshorde is a single-screen shooter game that sees you try ward off hordes of zombies shuffling down in your direction. Using your bow and arrow, you selectively pick off zombies as they come down the screen at different speeds. Collecting pickups will give you rewards such as points, bonuses, longer firing range, and multi-arrow shooting. The game is a free digital download and provides a good challenge across its 9 levels, but most players won't go back to it for repeated plays. Lost Realms of Mercasada is a light RPG adventure game that is designed to be played over a series of short episodes. The first episode of the series has been released and sees you control a knight on the search for the Holy Grail. As you navigate your way across the landscape, you go around searching items to build up wealth so that you can purchase weapon and armor upgrades. You need to be efficient with your movement, as your strength decreases by 1 for every 20 moves you make. Your strength can also be lowered by coming into contact with various hazards and by combat. Strength can be regained by finding water in wells. You can also regain your strength by eating fungus found throughout the landscape, buying food in villages, or partaking in fun activities with wenches. But be warned that these experiences can also be bad, resulting in your strength decreasing, so it's a bit of a gamble. I really enjoyed this first episode of Lost Realms of Mercasada because it delivers what it promises: simple and easily accessible gameplay with a small puzzle element. I like that the combat system is light, and the Ultima style graphics are quite effective. The only thing that needs improvement is the addition of joystick controls, as episode 1 is keyboard only. But the good news is that the developer of the game has confirmed that this will be added to episode 2. Lost Realms of Mercasada episode 1 is available as a free digital download. LC Games has paid tribute to Miss Pac-Man with the release of Lady Pac. The game is very well presented and everything looks and sounds quite good. Lady Pac plays similar to Miss Pac-Man but has a couple of tricks up its sleeves. Levels are randomly generated, which is great for repeat play value, and the game includes bonus stages to help break things up. While the Ghost AI is perhaps not as sophisticated as the original game, this is quite an enjoyable arcade game that will have fans of the genre coming back for more, and best of all, it's a free digital download. And that is a wrap for this month's C64 Roundup. Thank you so much to all viewers who have supported RGN and this channel. It is very much appreciated. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, bye for now.